So now, my dear devotees, we shall speak about the holy names. And I will read some verses and purports, basically to the effect that the holy name of Krishna is Krishna himself. First, I will read a beautiful verse by Srila Rupa Goswami, which is included in the Vidagdha Madhava 115, which is a 7-act play written by Srila Rupa Goswami. And it's quoted in Chaitanya Charitamrita Adya Lila, chapter 1, text 99. Let us read the translation. I do not know how much nectar the two syllables Krishna have produced. When the holy name of Krishna is chanted, it appears to dance within the mouth. Then we desire many, many mouths. And when that name enters the holes of the ear, we desire many millions of ears. And when the holy name dances in the courtyard of the heart, it conquers the activities of the mind. And therefore, all the senses become inert. So this verse reminds me of Srila Prabhupada's explanation of the holy name, that in the material world or relative world, the name of a thing and the thing are different. For example, if I'm thirsty and I chant water, 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 simply chanting water, water won't quench my thirst, because the word water and the thing water are different. But in the spiritual realm or absolute realm, the name of the thing and the thing are the same. So when we chant Krishna, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna is actually present, dancing on our tongue. So the next verses are from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila, chapter 17, texts 133 and 134. Actually, 132, 133, and 134. Text 132. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Bolo.
Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
So again, Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila, chapter 17, text 133. Deha dehira nama namira Krishna nahi beda. Jivera dharma nama deha swarupa videta. Translation. There is no difference between Krishna's body and himself, or between his name and himself. But as far as the conditioned soul is concerned, one's name is different from one's body, from one's original form, and so on. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is herein pointing out to the Brahman that Mayavadi philosophers cannot understand that the living entity is equal in quality with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because they do not accept this, they think that the living entity has been falsely divided from the original Brahman due to being conditioned by Maya. Mayavadis believe that the absolute truth is ultimately impersonal. When an incarnation of God or God himself comes, they think he is covered by Maya. Due to a poor fund of knowledge, they cannot understand that Krishna has no body separate from himself. His body and himself are both the same absolute truth. Not having perfect knowledge of Krishna, such impersonalists certainly could commit offenses at his lotus feet. Therefore, they do not utter Krishna, the original name of the absolute truth. Actually, they do not believe in Krishna, but consider all these names to be material vibrations. It is a fact, however, that the name of Krishna and Krishna, the person, are both spiritual. Everything about Krishna is transcendental, blissful, and objective. For a conditioned soul, the body is different from the soul. And the name given by the Father is also different from the soul. The conditioned living entity's identification with material objects keeps him from attaining his actual position. Although he is an eternal servant of Krishna, he acts differently. The Swarup, or actual identification of the living entity, is described by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as Jivera Swarupai Krishnara Nityadas. That's Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila 2108. The conditioned soul has forgotten his real activities of his original position. However, this is not the case with Krishna. Krishna's name and his person are identical. There is no difference between Krishna's body and his soul. Krishna is simultaneously both soul and body. The distinction between body and soul applies to conditioned souls. The body of the conditioned soul is different from the soul, and the conditioned soul's name is different from his body. One may be named Mr. John, but if we call for Mr. John may never actually appear. However, if we utter the holy name of Krishna, Krishna is immediately present on our tongue. In the Padma Purana, Krishna says, Mad Bhakta Yatra Gayanti Tatra Tishtami Narada. O Narada, I am present wherever my devotees are chanting. When the devotees chant the holy name of Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Lord Krishna is immediately present. And then the next verse is quoted from the Padma Purana. It's a very important verse and famous verse. Nama Chintamani Krishnas Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha Purna Shuddho Nityamukto Vinatva Nama Namino. I'll read the synonyms because the verse is so full of meaning, and the meaning comes out when we understand the synonyms. Nama, the holy name. Chintamani, transcendentally blissful giver of all spiritual benedictions. Krishna, not different from Krishna. Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha, the form of all transcendental mellows. Purna, complete. Shuddha, pure, without material contamination. Nitya, eternal. Mukta, liberated. Abhinatvat, due to not being different. Nama, of the holy name. Namino, and of the person who has the name. Translation. The holy name of Krishna is transcendentally blissful. It bestows all spiritual benedictions, for it is Krishna himself, the reservoir of all pleasure. Krishna's name is complete, and it is the form of all transcendental mellows. It is not a material name under any condition, and it is no less powerful than Krishna himself. Since Krishna's name is not contaminated by the material qualities, there is no question of its being involved with Maya. Krishna's name is always liberated and spiritual. It is never conditioned by the laws of material nature. This is because the name of Krishna and Krishna himself are identical. So, my dear devotees, when we chant the holy names, we are in the presence of Krishna. And so we should be very alert and attentive and worshipful and prayerful. And we can understand that the holy name of Krishna is transcendental because we can chant it hour after hour, day after day, year after year, and never get tired of chanting it. Whereas other things, other words or other names, if we chant them again and again, we become sick of them, get tired of them. once Srila Prabhupada gave a talk at the Harvard Divinity School. This was during the 2 weeks or so that he was in Boston after I first met him and the devotees. And after his talk, he took questions, as usual. And the students at Harvard were quite bright, and many hands shot up, and different students asked questions. So one student proposed that you are saying that we should repeat Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, but couldn't you repeat anything? Like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and get the same result. And Srila Prabhupada replied, of course, that is not possible. But if you want, you can try counting. And when you get tired of counting, you can try chanting. And all the students laughed. So now I will read Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela 15:108. When one is situated on the absolute platform, one can understand that the holy name of the Lord and the Lord himself are identical. At that stage of realization, the holy name of the Lord, the Hare Krishna mantra, cannot be identified with any material sound. If one accepts the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra as a material vibration, he falls down. One should worship and chant the holy name of the Lord by accepting it as the Lord himself. One should therefore be initiated properly according to revealed scriptures under the direction of a bona fide spiritual master. Although chanting the holy name is good for both the conditioned and liberated soul, it is especially beneficial to the conditioned soul because by chanting it, one is liberated. When a person who chants the holy name is liberated, he attains the ultimate perfection by returning home back to Godhead. In the words of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi 773, Krishna mantra haite habe saramochana, Krishna nama haite pabe Krishnera charana, which means that by chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, one becomes liberated from the world of samsara, and one attains the lotus feet of Krishna. Then Srimad Bhagavatam 6:16-39. The fact is that if one comes to Krishna consciousness, although he may have many material desires, he becomes increasingly attracted to the lotus feet of Krishna through associating with the Supreme Lord by chanting his holy name. The Supreme Lord and his holy name are identical. Thus, he becomes uninterested in attachment to material enjoyment. The perfection of life is to be uninterested in material enjoyment and interested in Krishna. So in all of our temples, after Mangal Arati, before Japa, devotees read the list of the 10 offenses against the holy name from the Nectar of Devotion. And Srila Prabhupada instituted this practice because just reciting the 10 offenses, as given in the Padma Purana, one is purified. And also, if one is conscious of what the 10 offenses are, one can make a conscious effort to avoid them. So here it says that the Supreme Lord and his holy name are identical. Thus, the chanter becomes uninterested in attachment to material enjoyment. So in the list of 10 offenses, the last offense in the list in the Nectar of Devotion is to not have complete faith in the holy name and to maintain material attachments, even after understanding so many instructions in the matter. So it's not an offense to have material attachments. It's an anartha, but it's not an offense. But what is an offense is to maintain the material attachments even while chanting, because the whole idea of chanting, as mentioned here, is to become uninterested in material enjoyment and interested in Krishna. Often after the devotees read the list of 10 offenses, they add, it is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. The Sanskrit language is such that it can be divided in different ways. And the way Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur divides the Sanskrit, he derives inattention as the 9th offense. And he says that if one is inattentive while chanting, all the other offenses can flourish. And if one is attentive while chanting, all the other offenses will be eradicated. So chanting attentively is most important. So now we read Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya 15:106. Prabhu kahe yanam mukhe suni ekabara, Krishna nama se puja shrestha sabakara. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied, whoever chants the holy name of Krishna just once is worshipable and is the topmost human being. Purport. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says that a person who simply chants the holy name of Krishna once becomes perfect and should be regarded as a Vaishnava. This is confirmed by Srila Rupa Goswami in his Upadeshamrita 5. Krishneti yasya giritam manasadriyeta. With such faith in the holy name, one may begin a life of Krishna consciousness. But an ordinary person cannot chant the holy name of Krishna with such faith. one should accept the holy name of Krishna to be identical with the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. As the Padma Purana states, the holy name of Krishna is identical with Krishna and is like a Chintamani gem, a touchstone. The name is Krishna personified in sound and is therefore perfectly transcendental and eternally liberated from material contamination. Thus, one should understand that the name Krishna and Krishna himself are identical. Having such faith, one must continue to chant the holy name. And yeah, there are some nice verses in glorification of the holy name, the transcendental attributes and effects of the holy name. Of course, we have the first verse of the Shikshastakam. We know the Sanskrit and it's beautiful, but for the sake of time, I will read the translation. Let there be all victory for the chanting of the holy name of Lord Krishna, which can cleanse the mirror of the heart and stop the miseries of the blazing fire of material existence. That chanting is the waxing moon that spreads the white lotus of good fortune for all living entities. It is the life and soul of all education. The chanting of the holy name of Krishna expands the blissful ocean of transcendental life. It gives a cooling effect to everyone and enables one to taste full nectar at every step. Now, one of the 10 offenses is to consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination. And one might hear such descriptions and consider them to be imagination or at least exaggeration. And the solution to that offense, or to avoiding the offense, is to actually experience the glories of chanting. And that was one of the motivations of my dear godbrother, His Holiness Satchidananda Swami Maharaj, in conducting his Japa retreats. And I had the opportunity to facilitate some Japa retreats with him. And that is, as he says in his inimitable German accent, that devotees are suffering from a kind of schizophrenia, because our motto is to chant and be happy. And they chant, but they're not happy. And the reason they're not happy is because they do not chant properly. And therefore, you know, he undertook these Japa retreats and workshops so that the devotees could overcome their schizophrenia and actually chant and be happy. Then the next verse of the Shikshashtaka. Nam Namakari Bahuda Nija Sarva Shaktis Tatrarpita Niyamita Svarane Nakala Etadrishita Vakripa Bhagavan Mamapi Durdaivam Idrisham Miha Janina Nuraga. My Lord, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, in your holy name there is all good fortune for the living entity, and therefore you have many names, such as Krishna and Govinda, by which you expand yourself. You have invested all your potencies in those names, and there is no hard and fast rules for remembering them. My dear Lord, although you bestow such mercy upon the fallen conditioned souls by liberally teaching your holy names, I am so unfortunate that I commit offenses while chanting the holy name, and therefore I do not achieve attachment for chanting. So this verse, you could say it contains two striking opposites. One is Tava Kripa. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as a devotee, is appreciating the Lord's mercy by manifesting himself as the holy name, Tava Kripa. But Durdaivam, I am so unfortunate that I have no attachment for the chanting. And then another verse in glorification of the holy name, and I don't know about you, but I'm being very inspired and enlivened by reading these verses of glorifying the holy name. This one is by Rupa Goswami. Padyavali 29, and it appears in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Leela, chapter 15, text 110. I'll just read the translation. The holy name of Krishna is an attractive feature for many saintly liberated people. It is the annihilator of all sinful reactions and is so powerful that save for the dumb who cannot chant it, it is readily available to everyone, including the lowest type of man, the Chandala. The holy name of Krishna is the controller of the opulence of liberation, and it is identical with Krishna. Simply by touching the holy name with one's tongue, immediate effects are produced. Chanting the holy name does not depend on initiation, pious activities, or the Purascharya regulative principles generally observed before initiation. The holy name does not wait for these activities. It is self-sufficient. So that is some of the power and glory of the holy name. Although we did read that earlier that one should be initiated by a bona fide spiritual master. Then one more. One more and then more, but then this next one is from Brihad Bhagavatamrita 1.9 by Sanatana Goswami. Jayati Jayati Namananda Rupam Murare Iramita Nija Dharma Dhyana Pujadiyatnam Katam Apisa Kritatam Muktidam Praninam Paramamamritamekam Jivanam Bhushanam Me. All glories to the all blissful holy name of Sri Krishna, which causes the devotee to give up all conventional religious duties, meditation, and worship. And somehow or other, uttered even once by a living entity, the holy name awards him liberation. The holy name of Krishna is the highest nectar. It is my very life and my only treasure. And then, well, I'm not sure how much time we have here.
Maharaj, please go on. You can go on for another 10 minutes. And then we'll have questions.
All right, because there's a lot of quotations that I've compiled, about the glories of the holy name.
Maharaj, maybe you can have a few more quotations and then we can take questions because many devotees are eager to ask some questions.
Okay, all right. So then the next one is from Namastika by verse 1 by Srila Rupa Goswami. This is cited in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Antya 471. And again, for the sake of time, I'll just read the translation. O Harinam, the tips of the toes of your lotus feet. You see, the holy name has lotus feet and it has toes, and the toes have tips. O Harinam, the tips of the toes of your lotus feet are constantly being worshipped by the glowing radiance emanating from the string of gems known as the Upanishads, the crown jewel of all the Vedas. You are eternally adored by liberated souls, such as Narada and Shukadev. O Harinam, I take complete shelter of you. And then from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 2.1.103 by Rupa Goswami, cited in Chaitanya Charitamrita Antya 362. O reservoir of all good qualities, just worship Sri Krishna, the purifier of all purifiers, the most exalted of the personalities worshipped by choice poetry. Worship him with a faithful, unflinching mind, without duplicity and in a highly elevated manner. Thus worship the Lord, whose name is like the sun. For just as a slight appearance of the sun dissipates the darkness of night, so a slight appearance of the holy name of Krishna can drive away all the darkness of ignorance that arises in the heart due to greatly sinful activities performed in previous lives. And then I'll conclude, again, there are many that I've compiled, but I'll conclude with this one. It's very nice. This is Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Lila 826. Eka Krishna Name Kares Sarva Papa Nasha Premera Karana Bhakti Karene Prakasha. Simply by chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra without offenses, simply chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra without offenses, vanquishes all kinds of sinful activities. Thus, pure devotional service, which is the cause of love of Godhead, becomes manifest. Jai. Shri Harinam Prabhu Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Yeah. Thank you very much for Maharaj for your wonderful association. Now we have a list of questions that devotees would like to ask. And we would like to begin with His Grace Gauranga Priya Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept our humble obeisances.
Jai.
Maharaj, thank you so much the way you were describing from different translations and verses and the relish with which you were reading it. That itself was just so inspiring, that how each word is full of so much nectar. Few questions are coming. So first question is that we see holy name described so much full of nectar. Now Haridas Thakur, when Mahaprabhu goes to him and asks what's wrong with him, then it is described that he said, my mind and intelligence are not okay because I am not able to chant properly. So one situation is he is sick or he's old from a physical platform. So the question is coming, when the body becomes old, it is seen on a practical platform that many devotees who have been chanting since long, but as the body becomes old, sometimes devotees find difficult to chant, like while chanting go to sleep, or even sometimes some devotees have shared that when they are very sick, they somehow just move their hands on the beads. So physical sickness is a reality. So when the body becomes old, the question is how to understand if somebody is struggling in chanting, is it because of the offenses committed, or is it one has to be compassionate towards oneself and understand that body has genuine challenges while chanting? Is there a place for self-compassion, or always self-compassion in the sense acceptance that body is sick, or is it always that I am not able to chant because I am offending? How to balance these two?
Well, we're meant to chant in all circumstances, and ultimately at the time of death. I was with Srila Prabhupada, during his last weeks and days and hours. And yeah, at the time of death, he moved his mouth, Hare Krishna, and then he left. Srila Prabhupada said practice makes perfect, even in spiritual life. So we have to practice chanting in all circumstances. I mean, the example of Haridas Thakur is quite extraordinary. And Lord Chaitanya personally, I mean, that was a pastime. that took place just before the Namacharya left his body. But it may be that due to sickness, one is not able to chant. Some years ago, I had a cardiac bypass surgery. And for some days, I couldn't chant. And then after the surgery, although I could chant some, but I still couldn't chant 16 rounds. So I kept falling more rounds behind. And eventually, I was 63 days of rounds behind. That means 63 times 16 rounds behind. But I had kept track and I eventually made them up. And Srila Prabhupada has given that advice in the Nectar of Devotion that if you miss your rounds one day, you can make them up the next day. In my case, I couldn't make them up the next day, but I did keep track and eventually I did make them up. So we should do that as a rule. We should do that as a rule. And yeah, I mean, the way you phrase it, you know, self-passion and offenses, I don't know if I would phrase it quite like that, but I would maybe phrase it using the terminology of Rupa Goswami and the Upadeshamrita. Utsaha nischayat daryat. Utsaha means enthusiasm, and daryat means patience. And Srila Prabhupada said that both are required, that if you're enthusiastic and not patient, he said enthusiasm without patience can lead to a desire to control. And patience without enthusiasm can lead to lethargy, laziness. So we want both enthusiasm and patience. And yeah, we have to keep chanting. Chant, chant, chant. So that at the time of death, we can also chant. Yeah, I don't know if I've answered your question exactly, but I tried to address it. But if you want further clarification or discussion, you can ask.
Yes, Maharaj, it very much like kind of answers. Just an extension to it. One devotee is chanting since 25 years now, and very senior person. So he made this point. Now we are talking about sickness. Simultaneously, I'm talking about old age also. So he was making a point that in renounced order, as a brahmachari or sannyasi, sometimes there is a concept of also developing a sense of loneliness. So when we are saying chanting so many years and there is so much relish and so much taste, but at the same time, this kind of concept is often discussed. Then there is lack of fulfillment at the level of, I don't know, heart or mind or emotion. So how do we see even that aspect also, which may come in a devotee's life as a person grows in his age?
Well, we should have friends in Krishna consciousness, good friends. If we have even one very good friend, we're doing quite well. And that is important. I mean, I quoted Upadeshamrita, Saha Nischayat Daryat. But Rupa Goswami also discusses the Sadbi Priti Lakshanam, the 6 exchanges of love shared among devotees. And those are very, very important. It's true, if someone is completely liberated, he can take relish in chanting the holy name and understand that the holy name is Krishna, and he can be completely self-satisfied. But for almost all of us, we need friends in Krishna consciousness, and Srila Prabhupada wanted us to preach. And to preach, we need to cooperate, which means we have to work with other devotees. So I would say that, you know, we need to be balanced in our lives. And part of that balance, you know, involves having friends in Krishna consciousness. It's part of it's part of the functions of a Madhyam Bhagavat, a prema, maitri, kripopeksha. Prema, we should give our love to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Maitri, we should make friendship with devotees. Kripa, we should give mercy to the innocent by preaching. And upeksha, we should neglect the envious. So yeah, very important to have friendships. And yes, as a brahmachari, you know, one may be very staunch, but as you say, as one gets older, maybe one gets a little more mellow, and one, you know, one's heart, you could say, is open to more loving relationships. You know, with, well, all the 3 types of relationships with superiors. We offer service with peers. We're friendly. And with juniors, we are merciful. But yeah, that's actually a very important point to have supportive relationships in Krishna consciousness. Very important point.
Thank you so much, Maharaj, for a very wholesome answer from different perspectives. Can we ask more questions? Yeah. One more question. Yeah. Yes, you want to? Maharaj, the question is, when you mentioned about preaching, we can preach Madhyamadikari, and also simultaneously you were mentioning about the 10 offenses to the holy name. So, and one of the offenses is to instruct the glories of holy name to faithless. Can you please share some experiences or examples from preaching life, that how do we really guard against this offense? Because while preaching, in the enthusiasm of preaching, like Jagai and Madhai, kind of, they didn't have any interest in holy name. So when we go out, different kinds of people are there. And sometimes preaching can also be very exhausting. And I was reflecting that one cause could be trying to preach people who are not at all interested in the holy name. And that can contribute to as an offense to the holy name. So how do we balance? Can you share some, thoughts and experiences in this regard?
Yeah, we want to give everyone a chance to hear the holy name. In the relatively early days of ISKCON, when Srila Prabhupada was sending the devotees out to do Harinam Sankirtan in the streets, And he said that the holy name will knock on the doors to the hearts of the people. So we want to give everyone a chance to hear the holy name and chant if they wish. But we don't tell them about the glories of the holy name if they don't have faith in our authorities. Because if we do, then they will commit more offenses. And then that's an offense for us. There was one conversation between Srila Prabhupada and a professor in Sweden. And during the conversation, one of Prabhupada's disciples started to, because they preach about the glories of the holy name. And Srila Prabhupada stopped him. And he said that that's an offense because he doesn't have faith in our authorities. And so to begin, we have to build faith in our authorities on the basis of logic and reason and argument. So that was one example. Another example from my own experience, which isn't exactly about the glories of the holy name, but it is, you could say, about preaching to the faithless. So my father and mother and sister came to visit me in India. This was a little after Srila Prabhupada departed. And so we were on a flight, I think from Delhi to Kashmir. And on the flight, my father was quite a rational person. And I thought about the book, Easy Journey to Other Planets, which Srila Prabhupada had written in a way as to appeal to like intellectuals and scientific-minded people. So I started to speak to my father about how to travel to other planets. And he was looking at me like, are you crazy? And I realized that if I persisted, it would be like preaching to the faithless. That he would think, I thought you were crazy, but now you've removed all doubt. So I realized I was on the verge of committing that offense, and then I sort of backtracked and I dropped that approach. So yeah, we do have to be very sensitive to our audience. And if they don't have faith in what we're saying, they could develop an offensive mentality. And then that is an offense on our part. So yeah, those are maybe two examples or reflections on preaching to the faithless.
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you for those examples. Just we'll ask if anyone has any more questions. Yeah, Brajmohan Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you very much for your wonderful quotes from the scriptures about the holy name. There are two ways in which we chant the holy name. One is Japa, another is Kirtan. And we often find that Kirtan is more absorbing, and more devotees tend to take pleasure in chanting and Kirtan than in personal chanting. And so 16 rounds is the one that we do in person, but we see that Param Vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam, Mahaprabhu always emphasized about congregational chanting. So is it, how do we know that we are developing taste in the Sankirtan? At the same time, the Japa aspect, how does it contribute to the Sankirtan movement?
Well, yeah, we have to chant our minimum 16 rounds. In one purport in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srila Prabhupada writes, of all the instructions of the spiritual master, the instruction to chant a minimum 16 rounds daily is most essential. So we have to chant our 16 rounds. But Srila Jiva Goswami says that kirtan has a special power to evoke spiritual emotions. And therefore, it can be very powerful, kirtan. But it shouldn't be that because we prefer kirtan, we neglect chanting. I discussed this with His Grace Madhavadas, the famous kirtan leader from Mauritius. And, you know, he was saying that many of the youth, of course, that may not be the case in India, but he was saying worldwide, many of the youth do not chant japa. They just like to join in kirtan. And he was concerned about that. I was also concerned about that. So we really need to do both. But yeah, kirtan, as Jiva Goswami says, it has a special potency to evoke spiritual emotion.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. One more question now. Brajmohan Prabhu raised this point about Kirtan versus Japa. We can also extend this to another perspective, that there are five most potent limbs of bhakti: Vaishnav Seva, Bhagavad Seva, Nama Seva, deity worship, Archa Vigraha, Dham Seva. On a very practical level, if we see, some devotees have lot of taste for Vaishnav Seva, and some have lot of taste for deity worship, and some like to attend a lot of japa retreats or kirtans or like that, holy name. So sometimes this thought comes that why make life so difficult? Those who have deity worship taste, they should just do deity worship, because sometimes it is fine. Some people have so much love for deity worship or Vaishnav Seva, and they're not so interested in finishing their 16 rounds. That's something they have to do because vow has been taken, initiation. So why not just allow them to do what they like to do, and 5 limbs? So let everyone be happy. Those who want deity worship, let them do deity worship. Those who want to do Vaishnava Seva, let them do that. And they will be very happy. Japa is like kind of make their life miserable sometimes. So how do we see this?
Yeah, I don't know if it's really true that they would be happy if they didn't chant their 16 rounds. I mean, the 16 rounds is our foundation. And in that section of Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srila Prabhupada quotes, he's commenting on that, Satatam, I'm not thinking of it, but always remember Krishna, never forget him. Vismartavya najatu chit. And Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport that in the Krishna consciousness movement, there are many activities, such as distributing books, enrolling life members, and they all involve remembering Krishna. But then he also says about the 16 rounds that, that if one wants to always remember Krishna, never forget him, he must chant his a minimum 16 rounds. Then, of all the instructions of the spiritual master, the instruction to chant minimum 16 rounds daily is most essential. So that's really the foundation on which the other services are built. And sort of similar to your question, not exactly the same, but when we were traveling with Srila Prabhupada in India, before we got to Juhu land, I don't know if he was American or Canadian or European, but some tourist found us and joined our party, and so he asked Srila Prabhupada the question, which is somewhat related to your point, that suppose it's late at night and somebody comes who could become a life member, but we still have to finish our rounds. So is it more important to make the person a life member, or is it more important to finish our rounds? And, Srila Prabhupada replied, well, if you stayed up long enough, you could do both. And then, but the boy was sort of pushing the point that, if all service is absolute, why do we have to chant 16 rounds? And Srila Prabhupada didn't often do this, but in this case, he sat up very erect. Why do you have to chant 16 rounds? Because the Supreme Personality of Godhead wants you to chant 16 rounds. And then he said, you can eat and sleep all day long, but you must chant 16 rounds. And then he turned to the other devotees and said, this is a special prerogative for him. This does not apply to all of you. But that was how important Srila Prabhupada considered the 16 rounds.
Thank you so much, Maharaj, especially the way you answered the questions, quoting exactly from Shastra's Nectar of Devotion, Srila Prabhupada, is just so convincing. Rasik Raman Prabhu wants to ask one question.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you so much for showing us that how much taste and nectar is there in the holy name and all of these verses which glorify the holy name. Maharaj, I was reading this, your book, the Juhu story, and in that I read you were mentioning that in the initial days that you were coming from US to India, and while you were coming down from the flight in Cairo, so you were jumping up and down and chanting. So that initial enthusiasm was very, very inspiring when I read that. But many times this question comes that this kind of enthusiasm is snubbed down as fanaticism of the initial days. But then later on one becomes dry. So how to maintain that enthusiasm without it becoming fanatic and continue with that enthusiasm? And vestiges of that fanaticism can go out, but that enthusiasm should prevail. So how to ensure that?
Well, Srila Prabhupada said enthusiasm comes from following all the regulative principles strictly. I mean, back then we had a lot of enthusiasm. I mean, we were chanting and following the regulative principles, and we had a lot of enthusiasm because of Srila Prabhupada's association. When we would take train rides in India, long distance train rides, and the train stopped for some time at a station, we would jump out of the train and do Harinam Sankirtan on the platform, and then we'd jump back on the train in time before the train left the station for the next station. So yeah, we had that enthusiasm. But it's also true. I mean, we can express our enthusiasm in different ways, but we should be enthusiastic to chant, and here we should be enthusiastic to preach and share. Yeah, but I wouldn't say we were fanatical. I think we were just enthusiastic. I don't think we were fanatical.
Maharaj, I was giving an example. Definitely, like in your case, that was pure enthusiasm. But in our case, that enthusiasm may be, tinged with some fanaticism also. So, how to maintain and retain that enthusiasm, and just remove the fanaticism. Otherwise, what happens is that we become logical and rational, and then we remove the fanaticism and the enthusiasm both.
Yeah. Well, what can I say? Srila Prabhupada said that religion without philosophy is just, well, let's start the other way around. Philosophy without religion is just dry speculation. And religion without philosophy is just sentiment or fanaticism. So based on that statement of Srila Prabhupada's, philosophy is meant to balance fanaticism or counteract fanaticism. Yeah, fanaticism is dangerous. It's sort of like coming again back to Upadeshamrita, niyamagraha, following the rules and regulations just for the sake of following without really understanding the purpose. That's one meaning of niyamagraha. And so, fanaticism could come in that, following for the sake of following without understanding the purpose. So yeah, we should be very balanced, and we should be introspective. In fact, when I joined, I was told that Srila Prabhupada said that at night when we lie down to take rest, we should think over the day's activities, what we did and what we could have done better. So yeah, we should be introspective. We should be open to improving ourselves internally and improving our presentation of Krishna consciousness externally. And pray that recently we celebrated Srila Prabhupada's arrival in America, and he's like praying to Krishna to make his words suitable for the understanding of his audience. So we should pray, that our words will be suitable for our audience. And we can pray to the Lord in the heart of our audience to make them receptive to our message, to his message. Should always be humble and prayerful.
Camera. Thank you very much, Maharaj, for your kind taking out time from your schedule to spend some time with us to give us your valuable association. We take this opportunity to express our gratitude by loudly chanting 3 times. Haribo! 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 His Holiness Giriraj Swami Maharaj ki jai.
Now, there are 2 hands up, not from your group. Do we have time? Do we have time for me to take those two questions or comments, or do we need to wind up now?
Okay, Maharaj, we can take those.
All right, so I guess first Raja Sundari and then Radhika Jajodia. From Mumbai, both of them. Sundari, you can speak. Oh, no, you just muted yourself. You were okay. You were okay before. Raja Sundari, you just muted yourself. You were okay before. Yes, okay.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. Please accept my humble obeisances. Actually, I have not asked any questions or raised my hand.
Oh, you don't have a question?
Yeah, but it's very nice and we are very fortunate to hear stories about Lord Krishna, which we are not knowing so many of it. And,
Okay.
please bless that, we'll get more inspired to chant nicely and attentively.
I will pray for you. I will pray for you. Not just you, all of the devotees who have gathered. Okay.
This is a blessing from Srila Prabhupada and Mahaflowers.
Thank you. She looks after Srila Prabhupada's quarters in Japan. She and her sister Jayashree.
Jai Guru Maharaj. Garland from Prabhupada.
Jai. Special mercy. All right, Radhika Jojodia, are you there?
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Please accept my humble obeisances. Maharaj, okay, I can now start my video. Actually, it was restricted earlier. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Guru Maharaj, I have two questions. The first one being that since the holy name of Krishna, the sound vibration Krishna, and Krishna himself are non-different, so it might be so significant and important to pronounce the name Krishna very correctly during our japa. Now, my confusion is that when we write Krishna in English, it is Krishna, and we pronounce it as Krishna. But when it is written in Sanskrit, it is KRSN with a dot and A without a dash. So that pronunciation seems to be as Krishna. So I'm sorry, it is probably a very, very small and maybe insignificant maybe I'm not understanding it right. But should we pronounce it Krishna or should we pronounce it Krishna while chanting?
I would say whatever pleases your heart.
So both the names mean Krishna himself equally, both the pronunciations?
You know, the way you pronounce the two, I could hardly tell the difference.
Okay. And Guru Maharaj, my second question was that we've been hearing that the holy name and Krishna are non-different and Krishna himself is the holy name. But sometimes like today also you mentioned that the tips of the toes of the lotus feet of the holy name and not of Krishna, which maybe I thought that maybe there is a subtle difference in the personalities, or are we trying to give a separate identity to the holy name than Krishna? And also in Bhurijan Prabhu's Japa book, in one of the chapters, he addresses the holy name as Nama Prabhu, and even you did today. So rather than saying Krishna, we are calling him Nama Prabhu. So is there a separate identity, or how to understand that it's Krishna himself?
It's not a separate identity, but one terminology has one meaning and the other terminology has another meaning. So like if we want to say the holy name, we can say Nam Prabhu, the holy name, the Nam Prabhu. But the holy name of Krishna is Krishna. And so we can say Krishna. The Prabhupada had a disciple whose initiated name was Krishna Nam. He used to be in Pune. Yeah, Krishna Nam. So, yeah, as long as you understand it, and I think you do understand it, as long as you understand it, then these little distinctions of in the terminology are not very important.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So, my dear devotees, what an exhilarating discussion about Sri Nam Prabhu. If we are going to end now, I would like to end with Vaishnava Pranam. I don't know how you end the program, but I'd like to end with Vaishnava Pranam.
Yes, Maharaj, please.
Okay, I'll say the English and then I'll say the Sanskrit. Let us offer our respectful obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord, who are just like desire trees, who can fulfill the desires of everyone, and are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls.
Kalparubhyascha kripa sindhubhyev cha putitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.
Nantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai.
Jai. His Holiness Giriraj Swami Maharaj ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.